Okay, it seemed like some people liked my last reading of Marx. I read my favorite chapter in Marx's writing, which doesn't actually lay out a theory very much. Today I'm going to go to my second favorite. So I like weird things that are in his. And particularly, I like his idea of species being, which is in his chapter on estranged labor in economic and philosophic manuscripts of 1844. So we're at a much younger Marx now, like 30 years younger. Far more radical, I think. But still, there are things to pull out of this, no matter what you believe about radical. So we start with a summation of what has gone on in this book so far, where the worker becomes a commodity. Yeah, and propertyless. Okay, we have proceeded from the premises of political economy. We have accepted its language and its laws. We presuppose private property. Okay, so private property is presupposed as it is in Adam Smith, right? The separation of labor, capital, and land, and of wages, profit for the capital, and rent of land, likewise division of labor, competition, and the concept of exchange value, etc. So those are just standard terms in economics, right? So this, just saying, we're going to continue on with those standards as the basis. Okay, continuing on. On the basis of political economy itself, in its own words, we have shown that the worker sinks to the level of a commodity and becomes indeed the most wretched of commodities, and that the wretchedness of the worker is in inverse proportion to the power and magnitude of his production. So as he becomes better at producing things of value, the worker becomes more wretched, right? Paid less. Because not only is he producing more, but there's more things out there in the market that he's producing then, which therefore are worth less things. Worth less value. There's just more of them. Think about how expensive, VHSs were in the 1980s, and then by the 1990s they were $40. Okay. That the necessary result of competition is the accumulation of capital in a few hands. Right? We see this with fewer and fewer billionaires who have more and more money, right? And thus the restoration of monopoly. So it's in a more terrible form. It seems like monopoly is the natural state, that if you leave capitalist economies go, leave them to do their thing, that ultimately they lead to monopoly, right? Somebody does it better. Everybody wants that thing from that one somebody until nobody else is making it. That finally the distinction between capitalist and land renter, like that between the tiller of the soil and the factory worker, disappears, and that the whole of society must fall apart into two classes, the property owners and the propertyless workers. Okay, so later on this becomes the bourgeoisie and the proletariat. And then you wonder, well, are peasants part of the proletariat? No, they're not, right? That's later, though. So he hasn't theorized this as much yet. But we have the two classes, property owners and propertyless workers. So people who own property aren't really those who are working. And people who are doing the work aren't those who have property. So take, for instance, a company like Tesla today, right? I don't think Elon Musk has done any part of that thing, right? He is the property owner. Does he design the cars? No, he has engineers to do that. Does he innovate? No, those are creative people he hires, right? Does he market it really well? No, he hires marketers to do that, right? So the propertyless workers don't actually own Tesla, right? So every single part of it is done for Elon Musk, right? All he does is collect the money and then decides to have fun at playing politics in another country, right? He is from Australia, right? I don't know why you guys are set as Elon Musk. Yeah, continuing on. Political economy proceeds from the fact of private property. And if you remember the reading we did out of Capital, we know that his historical research, which he hadn't even done at this point, I don't think, right? Because that's after decades spent in the museum in London studying all those papers. Political economy proceeds from the fact of private property, but it does not explain it to us. It expresses, in general, abstract formulae of material process through which private property actually passes. And these formulae, it then takes for laws. So we're just observing things that are, and then saying that they're laws. It does not comprehend these laws, i.e., it does not demonstrate how they arise from the very nature of private property. So philosophical analysis of private property really had not been done, right? That's what Marx is claiming. Political economy does not disclose the source of the division of labor. So why is there division of labor? And capital. And between capital and land. It doesn't say why. What's the source of it? It just says that there is. When, for example, it defines the relationship of wages to profit, it takes the interest of the capitalists as the ultimate cause, i.e., it takes for granted what it supposes to evolve. Right? We take for granted that Bill Gates deserves the money that he didn't work for, right? That all the people he hired worked for. You know, we take for granted that Slim Guy down in Mexico, right? No, but none of these guys do their work, right? They're not working. They own somehow. Through some magic formula, they own private property, that is, their companies. Similarly, competition comes in everywhere. Yeah, competition. If you can't handle the competition, you pull out. Maybe you pull out with a lot of money like Ted Turner. And you could even use it for something good, like buying up a bunch of land and setting it aside for conservation, like Ted Turner, right? But either way, as you stay in the game, it's competition. So you don't have a choice. You have to buy up all the smaller companies in you, try to get your company to be a monopoly, and push the laws, meaning trying to get the senators, House members, and presidents on your side. So competition comes in everywhere. It is explained from external circumstances. As to how far these external and apparently fortuitous circumstances are but the expression of a necessary course of development, political economy teaches us nothing. We have seen how, to it, exchange itself appears to be a fortuitous fact. The only wheels which political economy sets in motion are avarice and the war among the avaricious, competition. Right? Those are the wheels, political economy, right? If you don't compete, your company loses. Right? You can choose not to buy a senator, but you're going to lose. You can choose not to undercut the pay of your laborers, but the companies that do are going to win and you're going to lose. Precisely because political economy does not grasp the connections within the movement, it is possible to counteroppose, for instance, the doctrine of competition to the doctrine of monopoly, the doctrine of craft liberty to the doctrine of corporation, the doctrine of the division of landed property to the doctrine of the big estate. for competition, craft liberty, and division of landed property were explained and comprehended only as fortuitous, premeditated, and violent consequences of monopoly, the corporation, and feudal property, not as their necessary, inevitable, and natural consequences. Okay. We'll continue there next time.